Okay.
Welcome back. I hope you all had a great lunch like we did. We rocked Wawa, right, Dave?
We did, which is better than Sheets, fun fact.
Dave really likes the Philadelphia area and everything associated with it. So I'll agree to disagree on that one. How's that sound?
They got quality meats at Wawa. Sheets, you don't know where that stuff's coming from.
So here we are, still at Unpub, which has been phenomenal. Joined by Brent Keith. And you guys have seen Brent a few places we've been associated with. He was at Portal Game Day that I was attended about 2 months ago, I think, ish.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
And at Portal Games, what else? And then you were on Geekspiel.
Yep, Geekspiel.
So, welcome, Brent. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, the big news, you're funded.
Yeah.
How's it feel?
It feels awesome.
Yeah.
It's great. I feel like, there's still a lot of pressure, but I feel like as far as that push and the marketing and all that sort of stuff, we could get 0 new backers and we're still good.
There's weight off the shoulders.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Definitely.
With a whole new weight added on,
Exactly.
of course.
Exactly.
But,
yeah,
as far as that.
And it's funny because so many self-funded or self-publishing companies, you hear the same thing, especially their first funded Kickstarter. It's like, oh, it's so great, but now I have to go through the whole process of production and then shipping and all the pains that go along with that.
Yep.
So what is your experience been? What have you learned through this process, which is probably a lot?
So much.
Walk us through it, because the funny thing is, you guys can watch the video from Portal Game Day that we spoke about some of the same things, and I'm sure that your answers now are going to be drastically different than that day.
Probably,
so.
definitely.
So, go give us a little synopsis. What's the journey been like?
It's been crazy. There's been some ups, some downs. I'd say the biggest thing I learned is probably I should have invested more in graphic design. We had kind of a low budget.
Right.
So we spent a ton of time working on the mechanics, making the game really solid.
Yep.
The illustrations we put a lot into, but some of the graphic design elements we just didn't touch up as much as we should have. And that was a big misstep for us.
Right. But I'll stop you for a second, because don't beat yourself up over that. That's a learning curve. But the pat on the back here for you is that it was something you realized, and that you're funded, is something you're addressing. Right?
Yes.
And I guess that you could share that with everybody too.
Yeah.
So what you see here has transformed from final production to essentially late stage prototype, and there will be changes graphically to elements of the game.
Yes. Yeah, we're making some changes. Yeah, because we got a lot of that, because we got featured on a few things.
Yeah.
And so we ended up getting a lot more feedback now than we were getting originally.
Right.
And we just got quite a few people who just don't like it.
Right.
There's this kind of there's and I understand, but it's also hard when it's your project to see through that. And we asked people, and most people were like, "Oh, it's okay." But what we realized is with Kickstarter, these are the early adopters. These are the people who wait in line for iPhones. They expect a certain level of product, which I don't think I fully processed. I don't, because when we took it to events, there were lots of people who loved it and were completely fine with exactly the way it was, but we didn't tap into enough of Kickstarter backers specifically to get that specific feedback of, oh, there's a higher expectation here.
Which is more. It wasn't always that way.
Yeah, and I think that's what got me was I thought of Kickstarter as, oh, this is a place where you come with an idea and you deliver a completed product after they fund it, and that's not what it is anymore, which is fine.
Right.
But I wasn't ready for that. I think.
Right.
And that's and that's okay. And I mean, we still got funded, which is great. And had we not gotten funded, we would have gone back, redone the design, and then relaunched with that way. But now that we are funded, we can still touch up the design and deliver a better product than what the backers expect, which is great. Yeah.
And you are going through that natural gamer design process of it's like almost like the cycle of grief. You know what I mean? But or grieving, but it's like it's there's a design thing where it's like, okay, I have my game's ready, everything's done. We go to Kickstarter. Oh wait, I didn't do enough marketing, or I didn't do. We had to make a few elements pop with it. So it's a natural process, and I'm even more excited to speak with you today because you sort of hit those bumps and you address them, and I feel like you're in a better place because of that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and I think what we realized too about the graphic design, and we had this idea originally, but marketing is multiplicative. So The big thing that I do somewhat beat myself up about regarding the graphic design is any dollar we did invest in marketing was not as useful as it would have been had we invested a little more up front.
Smart. You're right.
And so that's frustrating because it feels like that was wasted.
Yeah.
And that's okay because, like you said, there's a learning curve to it. We know for our next project.
Right.
But I think what I'm most disappointed about is I think there are people who would really love the game who just don't like the graphic design as they saw it on the Kickstarter, and now they're not getting it for that reason. And that makes me sad because now they just won't get the game.
Right. So are there specific things you're looking at addressing, or? So
specifically, I'm looking at the biggest thing is the cohesion. So we had 2 artists who worked on this, and the illustrations don't match some of the other graphic design elements. There's this semi-realism to the board and to the card borders specifically that don't match the comic book style of the art itself.
Right.
And this was the original approach we were going to take. We have some Throwback Thursdays we did on our Instagram where we actually have art that matches this more cohesively, but this doesn't. And so it just doesn't connect. Like it's okay, but it's not
no objective issue with it, but
exactly
trying to make it all fit.
Yes, to make it all cohesive. Like when you look, if you just saw this border and you just saw this art, it wouldn't look like it goes together.
Right. Yeah, it looks very
exactly. Yeah, there's a disjoint.
Do you want to actually go and switch the camera so people can sort of see what we're talking about? So
I had it queued up, but
there we go.
Yeah.
So if you show now, sort of the idea what you're talking about. If you want to hold it up a little bit, you can. I'm not sure if it'll focus. But
I don't know.
At least to get an idea.
Yeah, they can also see it on. We have it on the Kickstarter page and stuff too. Yeah. They want to take a closer look.
Absolutely. So there's and actually we'll do a little bit of call to action at this point. So how much time do we have left on the Kickstarter at this point?
So
21 hours.
21 hours.
I've linked it a couple times now in the chat.
See, Dave's doing his job.
Make sure you take a look at that.
Thank you, Dave.
Just because it's funded doesn't mean it's over. So make sure you get in there.
Yeah.
And lucky for everybody, it's a very simple one. You get 3 options.
Yeah.
One's to buy the game. The other 2 are just to show your support. Or actually, the one is if you own a store. So just
retailers
2 of them.
show their support.
Retailers show their support too. Yeah.
And
very
honestly,
free shipping too. That's big.
Yes.
That's very big with the games. Yeah, free shipping on that.
And another thing that's important too is with the new information that you are updating some of the components. If you guys were on the fence, and that was one of the reasons you were on the fence. Granted, I don't know if you're going to have any type of workable stuff available before the Kickstarter ends, but knowing that this isn't final, if you guys were on the fence because of some visual aspect, there will be changes, and I'm sure you'll be taking feedback all the way up to the end of the production, until you go into full production.
Yep.
So if you're part of this Kickstarter, even though it becomes funded, that communication doesn't end through updates and through the community that Brent is creating through Kickstarter. Make sure you guys share with him your opinions throughout the process, because the only way that you can make the game that you all want is if Brent knows that. So make sure you get if you're already part of it, or if you're going to become part of it, make sure you share all of your opinions honestly and openly with Brent to make it the best game he could possibly make.
Yep,
absolutely.
So with that, why don't we go ahead and jump into a little rule teach?
Right.
So you guys have seen this before on our channel, but we're going to go ahead and let Brent teach it right now for you all.
Cool. So at the beginning of the game, everyone will choose a leader. The person who goes first will actually choose their leader last in a drafting form. So the last player in a 4-player game will have 5 options to choose from. Second to last will have 4, and so on and so forth. So the first player will have 2 options of leaders. Once you choose your leader, you'll set it in front of you. And that leader will give you some sort of special, unique ability for the remainder of the game. So you'll have that ability from the beginning on, and then there's a list of actions that your leader can assign to your worker cards. So in the beginner version of the game, everyone starts with 2 workers. In the regular version of the game, you only start with 1 worker. This is to help give people kind of an introduction to the game, help people kind of familiarize themselves with cards, and have sort of a slightly shorter play experience. Right. It also gives the option of, if someone wants to play the game a little faster, they can, if they go to a game night and they only have an hour, they can sit down and play it versus having to commit to a longer game.
We've done this with a lot of our streams that we've done with you, and it really does present the game in a way that you get to learn it, but not go into the super strategic part of it.
Exactly. Right? Yep. So each of your workers will get to perform one of these actions each turn. So there's 7 actions total that they can perform. There's the mining action, which is just collecting gold. So this is how you get gold to buy cards throughout the game. There's the market action, which lets you buy items. You spend the cost of the item on the bottom and put it in front of you. Items are all one-time use, and when you do a market action, you can buy 2 of them. They also replenish immediately. So if I spent 3 on this stolen research, we'd flip out another item. And then I would get to decide if I want to buy a second one.
Right, and you could pull, and you have an option to pull from the deck itself, right? Do you have to?
No, so you do have to pull from face up. Yes,
okay.
so you do have to pull from the offer.
Yeah.
But there's another action that lets you scry a little bit from the deck.
Okay,
we'll get into in a moment.
Got it.
Then there's build. So in the building, what you do is you pay the cost in the bottom of the building. You put that building in front of you, and then you put time counters on that building. So fortification takes 2 time counters. And then the next action is the develop action. This is how you develop buildings, build them in order to get their abilities. So by building, you get to reserve that card for yourself. This building is a building I'm going to start working on. And then the develop action is how you take these counters off. And once these counters are removed, you now get the building's long-term effect.
Right. And just so people are aware, so when you develop each worker, so in that instance, you'd have to tap both workers. Turn both workers.
Yep.
To activate
magic
them.
Days always come out strong with Will.
What's that?
You said tap. I said the magic always comes through strong.
Turn the workers to use them to activate that action twice, which would have taken the counters off, and then it would have activated that building and it would be live.
With the items, some of them persistent, some of them instant.
So all of the items are instant. All the buildings are persistent.
Gotcha.
Yep. So that's the build and develop action. Then there's the recruit action. So there's also 3 units available face up. So you'll pay the cost in the bottom of the unit, same as you would for buildings and items. Then you get to play that unit onto the board. So the board is a grid. It's a war zone, if you will. When a unit is first played, it gets a new unit counter on it. Units can't move or attack the turn that they're built, so they have summoning sickness, so to speak.
Right.
The next turn, this will get removed. And then after you do all of your actions with your workers, you can move and attack with all the units on the board. Each unit can move up to 2 spaces and can attack up to 2 times. The way units are distinguished on the board is actually the way they're facing. So the bear, for example, will face this way, whereas the stag's units will face this way. This allows you to determine whose units are whose as they're moving around throughout the board. The way combat works is if the knight is adjacent to the juggernaut, it can choose to attack it. It has an attack point down in the bottom right, so the knight deals 2 damage. And then that player can choose whether they want the juggernaut to counterattack the knight, in which case it would take 1 point of damage. Damage is persistent, so it stays on the units until the unit dies or until you heal it with an item or building that allows you to heal them. And then if a unit takes equal to damage to their health after the full attack is done, so a unit can get over damaged and then die immediately, then that unit will die. You can either discard the unit forever and say, I don't want it anymore, or you can pay 2 gold to add it to your research to buy later, which we'll go into the researching action in a moment as to how you get more cards.
Research is probably the most clever mechanic I think you have going on within this design.
Appreciate that. Yeah. So then the other thing with units is, in addition to attacking other units, you can also attack other players' castles. You are not able to move through walls, and you're not able to move through other players' units. You also are not able to move into other players' castles. This allows them 3 spaces that they can spawn units to defend themselves. When you attack a castle, no matter how much attack your unit has, you will always only deal 1 damage to the castle, and the castle gets to counterattack you for 1 damage. So essentially, to take another player down to 0, you're going to need at least 10 health worth of units fighting their castle. In addition to dealing damage to their castle, when you attack their castle, you can also deal damage to their buildings. So you'll notice each building has a hit points at the bottom of it. So if you manage to deal a final point of damage to a building, which collects damage counters the same way units do, then that building would be destroyed. Same as units, when a player's buildings are destroyed, they can pay 2 gold to add it to their research to rebuild later on. So that's combat. That's how you attack and maneuver. There's 2 more actions. One is the research action, which we talked a little bit about. So research is basically a private pile that you can buy cards from later. When you do, you buy them the same way you buy the face-up cards. So currently, if I have 1 unit in my research, I have 9 cards I can buy plus this 1. I am the only person who can buy this 1 individual card. Research is private, so when you do a research action, let's say I like the items, but I don't like the items face up, I can choose to do a research action on them. To do so, I would draw 3 cards from the deck. I would choose 1 to add to my research. Let's say I wanted this invincibility cloak. I would add it to my research. I would then say, okay, there's already an hourglass face up. I don't want another player to get 2 of them, so I'm going to throw this on the bottom of the deck, and then I throw 1 on the top. So it gives me a little control over what flips out next, as well as some sort of private card that I can buy later on. So that's the research action. Each action also has a max associated to it, which is listed next to the action itself. You can hold a max of 5 items, 2 cards researched, 6 units, etc. And then the last action is listed on the worker card itself. The reason for that is because you can actually get upgraded workers which don't have this action on them. The action is called upgrade. You pay 5 gold. You get to draw 2 upgraded workers. So
choose from the 2.
And choose from those 2. So basically what happens is you ask your worker, hey, what do you want to do? I want you to specialize in something. And they say, well, I could be a builder or I could be a recruiter. And you decide which of them you want them to start studying. You'll place the one you choose in front of you with 3 time counters. And then you'll put the other one on the bottom of the upgrades deck. So you will develop these the same way you would develop a building. And when this comes into play, it replaces one of your workers. When it does, it replaces them in whatever state it was in. So if you replace a tapped worker, it'll come in tapped. If you replace an untapped worker, it'll come in untapped.
Smart. There's
Yep.
And it can still do all the regular actions
exactly.
plus and whatever its special
Yeah.
ability is.
So they all specialize in basically one of the 5 actions we just went through. There's a miner, there's a merchant, there's a builder, there's a recruiter, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So yeah, you specialize and you can still do everything else. So those are all the actions. So you go through the game each turn performing those actions with the ultimate goal of either 1, eliminating all the other players, or 2, getting 6 victory points. When you destroy a player's castle, you also get 2 victory points and an additional worker. So there is a huge benefit there. And it's also whoever deals the final damage to the castle. So it's important to build a big enough army.
There,
Yep.
Yeah.
Which I did to my wife the other day.
Protect yourself,
Actually.
yeah.
And so it's important to have a big enough army to not only take out their castle, but also to defend against others who might try to stop you from doing so.
Yeah.
Especially since 2 victory points and another worker is important.
Yeah.
And so then victory points you get from acquiring various cards. Buildings give straight up victory points. There's a civilians that'll give you a victory point as long as you can keep it alive. Basically, you're proving, oh, my kingdom's safe to live in.
Correct.
There's a flag bearer, which if you can get it to the center of the board, you get a victory point for every 2 units you have in the center of the board. So there's a little bit of area and central control there. And then there's 2 items that have missions associated to them. Both you equip to a unit using a counter. So Excalibur, for example, I could equip to this foot soldier. And Excalibur will give you a victory point every time that unit kills another unit.
Okay.
And Holy Grail will give you 2 victory points as long as you get and keep that unit in the center of the board.
Okay.
So yeah, that's all the ways to get victory points. So different players will pursue different paths to victory and decide based on whatever engine they build or whatever strategy they pursue, how they think they'll best win.
So it's not just a straight, I got to go defeat the other castles. You can win through buildings, you can win through items.
Yeah.
And it's
And I would say
very interesting. Yeah.
And I would say it's less than 5% of games that the castle actually gets destroyed.
Right.
It's very uncommon. It's difficult to do.
I was gonna say it would take a lot of effort to do that.
And it normally happens more often in a 2-player game than in a 3 or 4-player game.
That makes sense.
Because there's less complications.
One thing you mentioned was 6 victory points. The difference is that on the easy mode game, we'll call it, when you have 2 workers, it's a 3-point victory, correct?
Yes.
Which got me a few times.
yes, it is a 3 victory, yes. On the shortened version, you're playing to 3 victory points. Again, that's to shorten it up and allow...
It's really a learning game. Like
yes.
The shortened version is just a learning, like and then kind of it's sort of expected that if everybody enjoyed it and during the learning version, you go right into a full game right after that.
Exactly.
Right? Maybe 10 of them.
You gotta learn it and then you go into your deep strats.
Yes, exactly. Because there's so many cards and each card has a different ability. So once you kind of familiarize yourself, you have an idea of, oh, I should go for this or I should go for that. Right. But there have been times where I go for like a heavy unit strategy and I really want a medical center and it never flips out. And I'm just like,
The nice thing about a 4-player game in this, or even a 3-player game, the 2-player is pretty direct. I'm going to beat you as any way I can. But the politics enter in a 3 and 4-player.
Yes.
And it's like, hey, if you go do this, then I'll do this. I swear, right? Yep. Or hey, he's getting really close to your castle. Maybe you should like pull your knight away from my castle and go take care of that.
And I love that aspect of it because I love player interaction in general, but there's kind of this pseudo player interaction of this diplomacy that you would have in a situation like this. You have kingdoms who are like, oh, I don't want you to kill that person. Hey, let's keep them from doing that. Or oh, I don't want you to do this. All trying to like benefit your own purposes.
There is an asymmetric feature in here too, because when you have a leader, each player end gets power. There's this common thing that you end up seeing with the player base where like some players love each archetype, maybe more than others, and you sort of fall into that, right?
Yeah, we just had a stream with Unfiltered Gamer, and he got so excited that he got Fader the Fierce, and he ended up winning. Oh no, or did they keep him? I don't remember what it was, but they were very excited about Fader the Fierce.
Yeah.
Either way, and
like the alliteration.
Thank you. Oh yeah, I'm a big alliteration person.
I noticed
so you'll see that in all my games.
I saw
at
the
least
one,
at one point.
and then as I was looking through, I was like, oh yeah, they're all. Like
I'm addicted to alliteration. So yeah, Fader the Fierce, Beatrice the Builder, Diedrich the Discerning. I don't know. It just sounds good to me very much. Like,
no, absolutely
flows.
rolls off. Yeah.
I'm big on that.
So that gives you guys a pretty good synopsis of how the game works. You know, past the funding, you have some other news, right?
Yes.
What else is
yes, my wife is pregnant, so we are going to have a baby soon, due in July. So
congratulations! You want to come over here and say
hi?
Sure. Yes.
So me and my wife match because our company is called Flannel Games.
That's
so
right.
We wear flannels to every
which
event.
Which is great because I never like any convention I see them at. It's like, oh, there's Brent.
There you go.
Then there's Brent's wife.
Yes. This is my wife, Jillian.
Hi.
So congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
Very much.
Congratulations.
It's a big year for you guys.
Yes. Oh,
Big
yes.
Sorry to disappoint anybody who thought the board would be made of flannel. It's a regular board.
Yes.
Sorry.
But yeah. So thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
So what do you? There's some really crazy stuff that happened during your campaign. To be honest, and not crazy, but one of the biggest things obviously happened recently. Do you want to talk about that?
The Jamie Stegman. Yeah. So Stone Mayor Games mentioned Furtherence on his blog. I've been emailing with Jamie for a few months.
He whittled him down.
I whittled him down. No, he's just a really nice guy. I mean, he's responded to almost all my emails in general. Even if it was something short, like, oh, I'll check it out, or oh, that's really cool, or things like that. He's just very responsive. So I sent him this very long, detailed email about, hey, I'm running a Kickstarter right now. I think I made a few mistakes. I think I did a few things right. Here's a list of things I did right. Here's a list of things that I would try to do next time. Here's some things I realized. And he took that big, long analysis and basically pulled out of it his new, well, I don't know if it's his newest blog now because he releases them so frequently.
He does.
But it was the do you need to fund in 48 hours?
Right.
Which is a big thing that a lot of people talk about. And I immediately got super excited and posted it to all social media, and that, like, people were blowing up like, oh no, you don't need to do that, or oh yes, you definitely need to do that, or oh, there were so many people that said I will only back a Kickstarter if it's funded, which shocked me because I did not realize it was like a very big percentage. I would say maybe 30 to 40% of the comments I got on various groups were, yes, I will only back a game after it's funded.
That's amazing.
And it was shocking. I was very shocked by it. But yeah. So yeah,
you not want to be a part of it funding.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. And then some people were also talking about, oh, we'll only do it if it's funded because we feel they didn't. Most people don't prepare properly enough, so that gives them a little bit of buffer. There were other people who said, well, I only go for super funded games because then they have stretch goals, so you know you're getting a better game. I don't want just a base game. I want like as much as I can get out of it. Things like that, which are just things I didn't quite expect, and that's okay. And it's all a learning experience, and now I know that for next time. And as a small manufacturer, or publisher, I guess I'm not manufacturing. As a small publisher,
wait till you see what you got. He's making it in his garage. It's like toilet paper cards. And no, it's not.
No.
It is being manufactured through legit companies.
Yes, so definitely.
So
that was a big thing, and we got a lot of
somebody in the chat also is skeptical of the better game you're getting with the stretch goals.
Right, and I think you know that, and that's there's a ton of.
It's like, what does it even mean?
Yeah, there's a lot of healthy discourse within our hobby space, and it normally some of the major points are like what usually around Kickstarter. A lot of like how it's being handled, how stretch goals with the original intention to sort of pump people up have been a double-edged sword because they've almost psychologically convinced people that you have to have stretch goals now. And then, like you said, if all the stretch goals aren't met, then people are like, well, I don't want a game that's incomplete. And it did like that reverse psychology almost to the people where
instead of it being like a bonus, it's like, why not just give me all of that?
Right. And the funny thing is, like so many companies over the last 2 years I've been watching Kickstarter have maybe not funded all the stretch goals, and then at like last they're like, haha, surprise, we're gonna give you all the stretch goals anyway, right? Because like one of the secrets is honestly almost all production, like they already factor in all the stretch goals into that. So stretch goals are it's a psychological tool to hype, and if it works, but it also could not work.
And I mentioned that in my email to Jamie, and he mentioned it in his blog post, was the fact that we did voting on stretch goals. goals because we wanted to do stretch goals that we felt people wanted. They're just simple promo cards that you add to the decks, which add a little bit more variety. They're ones that we've tested a little bit, but didn't make it into the game because they didn't match everything perfectly. So you can play with them and it's fun, but they're not part of the core game. And that's the idea behind those. However, now we have a bunch of people who voted on these stretch goals, and they reached the funding, which unlocked the first stretch goal, and they voted for the infiltrator. But it's sad because now we probably won't reach it. So they voted for this thing. They got excited about it, and we might not get it.
Well,
so
maybe.
I can see I mean, I don't know.
We got one since we started.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
There we go.
And we'll keep pushing, and if we reach it, that's amazing. But if we don't, I do understand the psychological thing about disappointment with regards to not reaching stretch goals. And I would like to still include those promo cards later on, eventually, but they're definitely not part of the core game, and they never were meant to be.
Tell me a little bit about your experience here at Unpub. Is this your first Unpub?
So yes, this is my first official Unpub. I've been to a lot of Unpub minis. This is the only big Unpub I have been to. I'm only here today, actually, so I haven't gotten to experience much. I've mostly just kind of reconnected with a bunch of designers that I hang out with at events like this.
We appreciate you making time for us.
Oh, of course. Definitely. Appreciate that. So yeah, mostly, I mean, we'll talk about Furtherence with several people throughout the day, but we're mostly here just to celebrate and see all of you guys that we don't get to see on a regular basis. And I mean, it's close enough. We're up in Pennsylvania in the Harrisburg area, so it's close enough for us to come down and visit and have fun. And if we can get a few backers, that's a bonus. But we're funded, so
everything's a plus.
Yes, exactly.
I will say, definitely, if you can next year, make the time, get here for the design mixer.
I've heard they're amazing. I heard
it is.
Even just from last year to this year was a significant improvement.
Really?
They did a hell of a job this year, really stepping it up.
And if you're a designer and you're watching this and you haven't attended Unpub, try to carve it out for yourself, because this is kind of the heart of the design community. In my I mean, you'll see it in other places. I'm saying Unpub is the only place you can get that. There are like proto spiels and other conventions that are directed toward the design community and the process of design. But here you really do get to have a deeper connection with designers than sometimes you have it like Unplugged and other things like that.
A lot of people that are going through the same stuff you're going through as well. Work through all that together, bounce ideas off each other. And a lot of the best stuff happens after hours.
And that's true. Like
just get a table, here's my thing. Play it around with you guys and see what happens.
And that's and I mean, like Thursday when you get here is honestly like a decompression from travel. You have the design mixer, everybody hangs out and talks. They stay up late playing games, existing or prototypes together. Then Friday morning is honestly like everybody sleeps in, and like everything doesn't trigger off till almost like 12 every day. Which is amazing
because last year it started earlier, and that's a lot. To get ready for in the morning.
It is, and then the open tables for playtesters usually don't open until later in the afternoon. And then when those kick off, you're getting directed. VIP playtesters or regular playtesters. There is no fee for a playtester to come in off the street, and we are located again in Maryland, Hunt Valley, Maryland.
Real quick, can you just give a quick little rundown? Somebody came in a little late. They're looking for like a quick 20-second rundown of the game.
Of the game?
Just real quick. Just compress all that in like 15 seconds.
All right.
And we'll do
go.
We'll do
go.
We'll do it again.
You have a variable player power. The leader that you choose has a list of actions that you can assign to your worker. You collect gold. You have buildings which give long-term effects for engine building. You have items which are one-time use for special situations. You have units that you move around tactically on the board, and you try to get 6 victory points. Ding!
Yep. Six victory points, you win the game. Yep. That's the goal. You have to strategically defend your castle while aggressing across the board. You can win either by building production, and sometimes items will trigger. It doesn't have to be combat. But that's the brief synopsis. Honestly, the VOD of this will be available right after we're done. So you guys, if you're wondering, you can go through the whole walkthrough that Brent already did. Also, we did a video at Portal, which is available on the Kickstarter page. You could see how the game works on that as well.
And there's a Kickstarter page.
And we also there's a Kickstarter page, and we also did an interview with you on Geekspiel where he does a rule teach there as well. So if you really want to dive deep into it, please check those out. Brent, anything else you want to talk about? Anything you want to plug?
The
general thoughts.
General thoughts. The one-player version was much more popular than I was expecting. So we did. Yeah. There is a solo variant of this. It took me a while to figure out how to make it work. It works really well. But that was a huge boon. We've had a lot of backers who are like, "Oh, I'm buying this as a one-player game. Yep. I might not play it with anyone else, but I really like the one-player version. I think it's really interesting." So that's, if you can make a one-player variant, I'd recommend it.
Do you mind like just giving us a quick how does that not as quick, you can by all means take your time.
Right. So
how would that differ basically, I guess, from like a 2-player?
Yeah. So the 1-player, it starts off the same way. It actually starts off with 2 workers. So it's similar to a shortened game in that, and you're trying to reach 4 victory points, which is also somewhat similar to a shortened game. So you pick a leader randomly, and then you choose your difficulty settings. So there's easy, medium, and hard. You can adjust it accordingly, which influence how many of these counters go on this opposing castle.
Okay.
So what will happen is at the beginning of the game, you'll just take your first turn. Everyone starts with 4 gold. So you'll take your first turn as you would. You'll do your 2 actions with your workers. Then opposing castles will spawn. So they spawn from the top of the deck. They check whether or not it has more than 0 attack. If it does, it spawns. If it doesn't, it goes on the bottom of the deck and they draw again. Then they spawn it in their castle, just like you. New units get a new unit token. They don't move. And then this castle will move its time counters off of it onto this castle. When these time counters are removed, this will start spawning units, and then this will start removing time counters. So the goal of the game is to ultimately build a defense and build an engine that you think will be able to let you survive long enough to reach 4 victory points.
That's solid.
You can also eliminate other players' castles. One note is that these units move this way, these units move this way, and these units move this way. You do not have walls in a 1-player version.
Ooh,
so it makes it a little easier for them to get in.
Yeah, wow, they can come at you from anywhere.
But it's really interesting, especially to watch people play it. I'm very entertained just watching it because you'll see people go for a full building strategy, trying to build catapults and fortifications, trying to beat their units. You'll see people be very strategic with units, set up an army of archers that shoot at them as they come toward the castle. You'll just see all sorts of different things.
It's almost like a tower defense in a way, right?
Yeah, a little bit. You can attack other players' castles, though, too, which is the strategy I like to try to do if I can. But if you do damage to a castle with a time counter, one time counter gets removed every time you deal a damage. So while you could be like, oh, I'm going to be sneaky and go in and try to destroy this castle before they spawn units, it makes them spawn units faster. So it's not always the best thing to do that. But I like to do that because once you destroy a castle, they stop spawning units. So if I can get in there and destroy someone's castle so that they don't spawn units anymore, I have less units I have to worry about.
Smart.
So there's just so many different ways to play and win, and it's just really interesting and entertaining, and it's a great way for people to familiarize themselves with the cards too. Yeah,
on top of everything else.
Yeah, exactly. So that's
a good feel for it,
and that's been a huge help to the campaign. We've had a lot of good feedback about that, and a lot of people saying that's awesome. Like I'm really backing for this.
Yeah, the first mode.
So yeah, and that was something we almost didn't add. We had a playtester who basically said, "I would really like a 1-player version of this. I love this game. I just don't know that I would be able to Well, mostly she's just too busy. She says most of my games I sit at home, I play by myself, I just work a lot, I don't have people I can play with. I love this game, I would like to play it alone, and so she encouraged me to sit down and come up with a 1-player version, and we've been fiddling around with different stuff over time. This works. We didn't want to just shove it in. We wanted it to be something that still
substantial.
Something substantial, something that still interacts with the feel of the overall game. And this worked out, and it's really just interesting because, like, if it were another player just spawning units every turn, you wouldn't be able to win. But there's something about the programming of it that you know where this unit's going to move, what they're going to do, how they're going to attack, that lets you plan strategically and go, okay, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do this. And then if you miss a step, you lose and try again. So yeah, that's been if you can come up with a 1-player version, highly recommend it. It's been a huge help. But again, don't shove it in. Don't put it in.
If it doesn't work, don't do it.
Plan it out.
Definitely.
Excellent.
Yep.
So much potential with that.
Yeah. Oh, it's fun.
That alone is like enough, I think.
Right?
Like, on top of like having it 4 players.
Oh, I played a lot. It was. I always joke that the 1-player version was really just an excuse for me to be able to play whenever I wanted.
Play your own game whenever.
Yeah, pretty much.
Future plans. So I mean, you have this. You're funded. That's great. Obviously, you want to get through making this game.
Yep.
Are you looking at making other games? Are you looking to roll Flannel games into something bigger than it is now?
Like so pajamas. Then.
It's not sure. It's just straight.
All of it, yeah.
A new set of gaming wear. This is what you game in. this is Are you tired of things not letting you reach across the table?
Quick question. Someone asked, is there an issue with only playing against the directly adjacent castles, a la Seven Wonders? So curious, they're saying.
Wait, say that again?
So they're saying...
So their question is there an issue with only playing against the directly adjacent castles, a la Seven Wonders?
A la Seven Wonders.
And so, like, similar to the way Seven Wonders work, are they referring to the solo mode?
Yeah, which doc? Do you mean the solo mode specifically, or are you talking about like in general? Because I think what they're saying is like the movement wise, like how they're coming this way, but you can still go this way, right? And you can still go this way and this way. I think that might have been what the confusion.
Maybe I'll answer this. This might be a different question, but one thing let us know. One thing we get asked a lot is in a 3-player version. There's this concern that the person in the center is going to get the short end of the stick, which just doesn't happen because the way the game is built, we have walls, which makes every castle equally reachable. So in order for this castle to reach this castle, it has to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. In order for this castle to reach this castle, you have to move 1, 2. Sorry, it's 4 spaces. It's 4 spaces either way. I'm sorry, I miscounted.
So 1, 2, 3, 4. There you go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yes, I miscounted.
All right.
Sorry.
We got it.
We got it.
Counting.
Counting. I was a math major in college, so counting's hard.
For a second, you're like, oh my god, I've been saying this all the time. Did I miscount?
And I did miscount, but there was this moment that I was like, did I? What?
My entire pitch over the last 6, 7 months a year. Have I been wrong?
No. Yes. Okay, good. Yes, each castle is equally reachable by every other castle. So the person in the middle does not get a short end of the stick by any means in that sense.
Right. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, maybe. Is that...
So they're saying no, just the effect of playing against the people on your left and right.
The effect
so I think that... So what Brent was saying is because of the wall aspect of it, you have to move an equal distance between each one. So because you're moving equal distance, yes, there's 2 people on each sides of you, but everybody has equal incentive to go after the other one. So unless you just get like, oh, me and Will are playing against Brent and it's his game, so we're going to try and beat him because it's his game. We won't beat him in his own game.
There's probably a proximity factor. I think that might be like you want to aggress. You want to maybe like you want to aggress the next person left. Like instead of the person across.
Yeah.
There is definitely. I will say there's a political intrigue thing that happens in a multiplayer game where, and I think this happened a lot when I played your game. The person that you
got it.
Okay, the person to your left.
I think the walls and the movement thing is what we were confused.
And you can play a 2-player game.
We should have given him 20 seconds instead of 15. Then we would have avoided that.
Yeah, we should have given you like that 5 extra seconds.
5 extra seconds.
But no. So one of the things that ends up happening too is when you're dealing with the political aspect is maybe the players across the table, but you see a strategy forming, then you're trying to mitigate. So you talk to another player and you're like, okay. Listen, I see this guy coming here, and I think it might be better if you maybe drop your knight back and
like regardless of like it being equal. If it was me and my 2 brothers playing, my one brother would definitely not want to be in the middle just for the idea of it because he'd be like, "You're just gonna come at me." Like he would just be like, "Oh, real funny, you guys are gonna gang up on me like always." So it's just one of those things.
And you'd be like,
yes,
okay, bro,
it's equal.
fine.
It's equal. It doesn't matter. We'll come at you either way. Bring it. But that's how that would go.
So I think with that, I do want to thank you again for joining us.
Yes,
it's always great.
It's always great.
Super excited. I love the learning process and witnessing the learning process that you've gone through. Everybody, please go to the Kickstarter page. There is a 20-ish hours left.
20 hours.
20 hours.
You have a website as well?
Yes.
Or how do people reach you?
Furtherencegame.com. Yes.
Okay, furtherencegame.com. And then social media?
At Furtherence Game everywhere.
Okay, at Furtherence Game everywhere. I add ZZ Brent to you for this, I think.
Oh, ZZ Brent is my personal account.
On the Twitter?
I haven't done much yet on that, but I'm going to start.
Yeah, we tried, and I was like, this is the only thing I see. I guess this is what we're using.
So we are going to tear this down. We're going to be setting up for our next guest. Please stick around. Enjoy the trip hop music that I always enjoy because we're going to put that on for you.
Hi, Smunchy, by the way. Smunchy's jumped in.
Hi, Smunchy. Thanks for coming. We're going to tear down. Thank you guys very much. Switch to the other one. The other,
Which other one?
the nice one. There
This
you go.
one?
Yeah, that one.
So they can still look at us.
Yeah, you can watch us tear down and hang out. Hey.
Okay, a little
Hey.
fight time.
Why not?
Bye, guys.
All right, we'll be back. We'll be back with the next guest.